Traveling to another country is often very exciting and fun. However, it can often be followed by culture shock. There are so many different people and traditions in the world that it's not surprising they often catch us off guard. Some countries are more introverted and people there keep to themselves, while in other cultures it's often normal to say hello and smile at strangers. As a Swede, people here are in general pretty good at not interacting with strangers, looking out for themselves, etc. I was in Thailand during the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake tsunami, and in the aftermath, holy feck. So many Thai people were always helping me and my family, making sure we were well fed, had dry and not too dirty clothes to wear, helped us locate each other as we had gotten separated. I will never forget how amazed I was. It was neither my first nor my last trip there, but the fact that they were so kind and thoughtful and selfless, even during a time of crisis, it showed the world to me, and it has given me a permanent faith in humanity. I'm Black British, but I never felt my race mattered until I went to America. When a large Maori man asked to touch noses with me in greeting, the dude looked pissed until I manned up and was the first to touch noses. Then he had one of the best smiles I've ever seen on a mountain of a man. It lit up the entire cultural center. Moving from war-torn Chechnya to Brooklyn, New York, I never really understood that life was more than death, that it actually had a purpose. I never understood that people live their whole entire lives in relative peace and prosperity, simply going to their day jobs all day and partying and drinking all night, without a care in the world. I lived in Grozny as it burned to the ground in the 1990s. My mother was killed, and my sister was horrifically injured, and I spent my time as a homeless 10-year-old attempting to survive and somehow get food. Mine was also in Japan. I was walking down a main street in Kyoto on a sunny summer day. Up ahead, I see a police car and a policeman and a long folding table on the sidewalk. As I approached, I saw the policeman was flagging down certain drivers with his gloved hand. The drivers pulled over, quietly got out of their cars, and calmly took a folding chair at the table. The police officer produced paperwork for the drivers to sign. They each read the paper and signed it and bowed respectfully to the cop. Then they got in their cars and drove away. I watched for a while longer and realized these drivers were being pulled over for traffic infractions. There were cops blocks ahead checking speed, then radioing the cop at the table with descriptions and instructions. I could not believe it. I kept thinking about how this might work in America. Every single driver would be screaming in protest. "This is bid. I wasn't speeding. I'm not gonna sign this. This is B." But the Japanese, they knew they screwed up and meekly and respectfully took their punishment, a small fine. That, my friends, was culture shock. It was even weirder than all the weirdness I saw in Tokyo. And there was a lot of weirdness in Tokyo. I grew up in Japan and moved to the US when I was 9. Before we moved, I'd only learned about the US from what was on TV, so I imagined it was this awesome suburban utopia where everyone was nice and all the houses had huge lawns and school was super clean and awesome. I had so much to look forward to, and you could imagine how excited I was to move to the greatest country in the world. But we moved to Alabama. I am from South Central Texas. Until I was 24, I had never left the state. Anyway, I get to Las Vegas, of all places, and oh my fecking God, my entire family is disgustingly obese. We should be embarrassed. Seriously, I am not sure if some sort of convention was going on, but holy cow, everyone was tiny compared to us. Anyway, I got home, felt like Sid, and lost 40-ish pounds. In university in London, I went to the communal kitchen in just a pair of shorts. When I entered, a female Muslim floor mate started screaming like crazy and ran out. I felt awful until she came back a minute later with her headscarf and started, profusely, apologizing for not wearing it in the first place. I'm standing there mostly naked as she apologized for being rude, for thinking she could just hop across the hall and make some food in a few minutes without her headscarf on, and how she should have known better. Once she let me in her room, just the two of us, though the door stayed open. We talked about our culture and the differences. We'd bonded a bit over the headscarf thing. That was super, super racy for her, and I appreciated what it meant for her. Very friendly, very open, very progressive. In Japan, the level of trust is incredible. I went to a convenience store with no staff. You simply pick your items, drop your cash into a box, and get your change. There is an open box of money in the middle of the store. Originally from India, went to Finland on student exchange. First night there, I'm at a party and everyone is going to a sauna. I'm prepared with my bathing suit and all, and then bam, find myself in a mixed-gendered sauna with all the people I've been hanging out with all evening, butt naked. Then after 30 minutes of sweating, they all went rolling naked in the snow. Took me a while to deal with it and finally get my swimsuit off. Grew up in a small town in the Midwest. My high school had 0 dropouts, pregnancies, arrests, etc. I never even saw drugs. Then I get hired as a cop in a ghetto area of a big city in Florida. Blew my mind. Moved back home 8 years later. Best decision ever. TLDR. Floridians are bat-sit insane. In India, they do this head bob that's part nod, part head shake. After 3 months of living there, I still had trouble deciphering it. Sometimes it means yes, sometimes it means no, and sometimes it means I don't have enough information to give you a reasonable answer at this time. The Indian head bob is the magic 8-ball of nonverbal communication. I stepped off of an airplane in Japan and was suddenly utterly illiterate. When I joined the military, during basic training, I learned a lot of things from my own country that didn't cross my mind. For instance, being from a good area from the Northeast, I didn't think racism was as present as it really is in some parts of the country. It really threw me through a loop. My father and I went to Japan on a business trip, and we went to some fancy restaurant. Our waiter was extremely polite and very attentive, so my dad left a generous tip for him. After the waiter saw the tip, he threw a fit and, he really did. He started screaming randomly at what appeared to be the manager and other workers. Apparently, he took it as a sign of disrespect because he thinks we thought he was extremely poor and left him the tip to help him out with his troubles. Needless to say, never tipped in Japan again. I spent most of my life in big cities. I moved to a small town in rural Ohio for 3 years for a job, just outside Amish country. Billboards everywhere saying that I'm going to hell or the true worship day is Saturday, and Satan changed it to Sunday. When I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money, but my parents worked hard to give me the best life they could. I remember one weekend when I was about 7, my dad had gotten an odd job to help this guy with some landscaping and to clear out some old furniture. My mom was working and we couldn't find anyone to watch me, so he brought me along because the guy had 2 kids I could play with. When we got there, I couldn't believe how big the house and property were. We had recently moved out of a basement apartment and into a house which I thought was huge, but their house was at least twice the size, and they had a giant lawn, a swimming pool, and a tennis court. I had never seen anything like it aside from TV shows and movies, so it felt a bit surreal. The family was really nice though, and I had fun playing with his kids. I remember as I was leaving, he gave me a baseball, which I still have to this day. From California, visited the South. Racism, so much racism. Also really great barbecue. I was teaching a class in South Carolina. I live in Minnesota, and sat down to eat lunch with all the guys I was teaching. Took a bite of my sandwich and noticed no one else was eating yet. I paused for a minute, and one of them piped in that they were ready to say grace. I had never experienced group prayer before lunch, especially in the workplace. Definitely a shock for me. American university campus culture. Compared to Canada, people are simply way more excited about absolutely every little minute aspect of their school, especially sports teams, fraternities, and sororities. Back home, people simply did not give a shit about any of those to nearly the same degree. You go to class, hang out with friends, maybe catch a game if you're bored and there's nothing better to do, but it's really not a big deal. Being a varsity athlete in the USA made you like a god. Being a varsity athlete in Canada makes you annoying if you bring it up too often in conversation. It was like hanging around some church that you're not a member of. Everyone would dress the same, do the same things, chant things, and get extremely worked up about stuff that means absolutely nothing to you. Also, the classes were way easier, which I suppose gives a lot more free time for those other activities. I can't even count the amount of times I spent exchanging awkward glances with the other international students, expressing feelings of, are these people serious? Also, legacy admissions are a thing in the States. Seriously, what in the name of feck? How can anyone justify putting up with that going on in schools? Moving to Bulgaria from England. In Bulgaria, shaking your head means yes and nodding means no. You don't even realize how hard it is to reverse a lifelong habit until you try. It's really disconcerting. Also, if you screw up, you look crazy. Imagine asking someone if they want a bag for that and having them nod at you while saying no. In Chinese tradition, it is rude to slurp your soup. In Japanese tradition, it is polite to slurp your soup. In Chinese, that came across Japanese friends slurping soup. So things got pretty strange until I asked him about it, and he explained. In America, strangers smile at you when you make eye contact. Back in my country, you get beaten up. Went on vacation to East Africa with my wife, who is East African. I was out and about in town, and dudes were glaring pretty bad at us. It was usually me, my wife, and her female cousin in the car. When we went to the market, guys were yelling into the car rude stuff, and my cousin actually looked shocked and sad. It was untranslatable. My wife basically told me that the people thought I was on a sex vacation. We also went to drop off some beans and rice to their grandmother, and when it came time, I lifted the 50-kilo bag, about 110 pounds, and threw it on my shoulder. Everyone burst out laughing because Mzungo, white men, don't work around those parts, and because, given the stature of the people, most of the men are like 5'6" and I am 6'1", it was quite the act of strength. And there was the one time a poor drunk woman kneeled before me babbling and grabbed my hand and rubbed in against her face. When I asked what is going on, my wife said she may have never seen a white person. We were well away from tourist locations, in person, and was trying to touch my white skin. Born in Korea, moved to US when I was 6. Realized pizza and hamburgers and hot dogs aren't the only things Americans eat. Coming back to the UK after 8 years, so many high-functioning alcoholics, I thought that was just a high school and uni thing. Nope. As a British person, I once went to France, and when I ordered tea, they gave me some sort of Lipton monstrosity with lemon instead of milk. Of course, I was straight back on the nearest ferry home. When I first moved to Ohio, I was in a convenience store buying a drink, and I asked to buy some stamps. The lady behind the counter said, "Please." I responded, "May I buy some stamps, please?" She looked really confused and sold me the stamps. Apparently in this town, when someone does not hear you, they say please and you are supposed to repeat yourself. I thought you just had to be super nice to people at all times. When I went to Germany, it was weird that girls were like getting away from me when we greeted. In Latin America, you greet girls with a kiss on the cheek. It's weird because I never really considered it a cultural thing until one told me. Before that, I started to think, Jesus, am I this ugly over here?